Okay, welcome to the Crow Discovery Project. Let's talk about the fraud of blood moon and the fraud of these full moon tetrads. It's complete BS, and I'm going to show you why right here, so let's jump right in. Okay, so let's jump right in here. Here is an article from Sky and Telescope that kind of shows the game that is being played around these eclipses. And the headline, in a border eclipse of the moon like last Saturday's, the difference between total and partial depends on some crucial assumptions. No, in fact it doesn't. We are told that our solar system works like a clock. So either the hand hits 12 or the hand does not hit 12. It's pretty simple. But listen to what's going on in this article, how they're trying to cover for whatever it is that's really going on. Right here it says, what still makes it so intriguing several days later is the question of whether the world saw a barely total lunar eclipse, the third in a tetrad of four, as almost universally predicted, or a barely partial lunar eclipse with a hair-thin rim of sunlit lunar surface remaining just outside the umbra or the Earth's shadow, which would spoil the tetrad. So first of all, they're introducing barely total, barely partial, all these things. It's a shell game. Either it was a total eclipse or it was not. And I'm here to demonstrate that I can prove it was not a total eclipse. And with this line right here, it would spoil the tetrad. The reason I'm bringing this up is because blood moon, the idea of blood moon, the use of blood moon in this kind of quasi-science, quasi-religious way that Goddard Space Center and all these kind of religious authors are doing, is it's a load of hooey. That's all there is to it. Right here it says, you'd think astronomers would be awfully embarrassed not to get such a simple prediction right. Well, hell yeah, they should be. They called it the third in a total eclipse tetrad, and in fact it was not a total eclipse, and I will demonstrate that here in a minute. Down here is the real kind of thing that got me going. Nor does, here, I'll highlight it so you know what I'm looking at. Nor does imaging help. Imaging is actually worse for determining the umbra edge. Now that is just flat out malarkey. They're trying to claim that imaging is not going to help determine this, and I'll show in fact why imaging absolutely proves it. They're trying to claim that all the settings on the camera can change things, which is true. You can change the color of things, you can change a lot of things, but the fact is the camera will pick up the lit edge, and you can make it pick it up very boldly, or you can click your camera all the way down till it doesn't pick it up at all. The point is the camera will control it. So let's move on here. Okay, so let's be perfectly clear here. You know, I'm using NASA data about solar systems and everything else. I've said this a million times on my channel. Over exaggeration. The moon, the sun, space, this planet, everything has been misdescribed by design to you. Now, in terms of what's going on now with these blood moons, I did a clip last time around when the blood moon came up. First of all, you can't call a blood moon unless it's in the fall time, which it happens to fall this time. But the term blood moon fell out of use so long ago it's not even funny, and it was never a scientific term for NASA or anyone else to use. It simply meant that the harvest had been taken in, there was no more harvest to go on, and people were going to kill animals to survive. That was the blood moon. It had nothing to do with color. Now let's address eclipses real quick. It is impossible, if we accept, which I do not, the description of how the color of an eclipse occurs. According to space agencies, the color of a lunar eclipse is determined by all the sunsets and sunrises on this planet. And since you cannot predict what any sunset or sunrise will look like, you cannot predict the color of an eclipse if we were to accept that that is what is going on. And I do not accept it. I have done clips that show lunar eclipses are manipulations. I have yet to see an eclipse, and I have filmed the last handful that we've had. I forget how many now, but in recent times I have filmed every one, and what we find is our eyes and cameras that take very quick exposures will see color, but as soon as we use the telescope as a telephoto lens and video it, or try to take stills, there is no color. That's a very telling thing. A telescope is basically just collecting more light. But to be perfectly clear, this idea that there was a tetrad that was going to be some kind of a biblical, meaningful thing because it fell on Jewish holidays is hokum. It's hokum for a number of reasons. The main reason that I will use to demonstrate is that by their own standards, it meant that we had to have 4 full total lunar eclipses in a row, and the one that happened in April of 2015 was not a full eclipse. And as in the article I just showed you, they are still trying to play it off as if we may never quite know what happened. Well, I do know what happened. I filmed it. And I'm going to get to my footage right now, and I'm going to go through this thing over for the second or third time now. Eclipses are manipulated events. They are not occurring in the way you've been told. And the last one was not a full eclipse, which means the whole tetrad, Jewish holiday, blood moon, lie, fraud is just, it's made up out of thin air. So let's jump in and take a look at my footage and I'll demonstrate it. Okay, so to bring everyone up to speed, if you remember on the last lunar eclipse, the one we're talking about here, I came outside to see this. Chem planes just bombarding right over the moon, blocking my view. And what this did is encapsulated in this next image, which I overexposed on purpose to show how much chem debris was blocking the moon. This is very blacked out on the outside, so it kind of doesn't show, but I just wanted to show the glow of junk in front of the moon. This next footage that I'll load up was shot through the scope. What happened was I started filming with my scope, and as the eclipse went on, I could no longer see it with my scope, so I switched over to 2 separate cameras, and I filmed it with a Canon and a Nikon. You can see the chem debris kind of going over the face of the moon. You can see the typical thing that we see with telescopes, although this is not the right part of the eclipse, where the telescope will not pick up color. I'm not the only one who's seen this. There have been at least 5 other people I know of that I've spoken with that cannot pick up telescopically the color. There was a transit of something, and I'll play that again a couple times. If you remember, on the eclipse before this one, we had literally hundreds of objects transiting the moon during the eclipse. The first one that I demonstrated was in a manipulated event. So here is one of my cameras taking images, and you can see that it is impossible to get a good focus because of all the chem debris. Now look at the lit portion at the top. Now I've opened up my ISO a little bit to take a still to get the color. Now if you do, like 2/100ths of a second or even quicker, you can get color like this. But what I was doing was increasing the exposure time to show the color. But look what happened on the upper edge here, how the blues and purples leaked into this image. I've never seen it before on an eclipse. Now people are going to say this is chromatic aberration. It is not. My optics are top notch. Both my telescope and my telephoto are supposed to be free of chromatic aberration. What you're seeing here, I believe, is that the light is refracting through the crap that chem planes had sprayed in the sky, exposing blue, which is the shortest light wave. Now the funny thing about this is they have invented a new term for the blue that showed up at the top of the moon in this partial eclipse that never went full. They're calling it the Chinese lantern effect. Sound very scientific to you? At any rate, what we're looking at now is the other camera running video. And I'm going to run a whole series that shows just how close to totality we came. But this image shows just about as close to totality as we got, meaning the whole thing was never blacked out. Now this is later in the evening, and you can see the blue creeping in on the top when we've already gone by what was supposed to have been totality, and the, eclipse shadow, or what we are told is a shadow, is creeping away again. So let me run one more kind of video to show this kind of blue refraction that's coming off the top, which is the strangest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen any blues or magentas in an eclipse, and again, they've made up this kind of Chinese lantern optical effect, which I tried to look up, but it seems like it's this kind of excuse that's been made because I can't find any official definition of what that is actually supposed to be. Now, I'm going to load what my Nikon telephoto did. This is a very expensive lens with no chromatic aberration. I'm running this footage at 1,000% speed to go through it. And it's going to run through all the way up to what totality should have been. Totality means when the whole moon would be blacked out by supposedly the shadow of the Earth. And again, I don't accept any of it. But we'll watch as it goes on. Now, for those of you that have followed my channel, on a number of eclipses we have filmed literally hundreds of objects transiting the moon. On this night, I wasn't able to film the whole thing, but I do have, I think, 5 or 6 objects that transited while I have my telescope on it. It's a bit more difficult with the telephoto here. But as we run through at 1,000% speed on my telephoto, which by the way is not tracking, as you can tell the moon is moving because I'm just on a tripod now because I've had to move out into the street to get away from the houses which are blocking my view. But it's getting closer and closer to what should be totality, or the full blacking out or shading out of the moon. And it never happens, and I'll prove it with these images right here. And if you go back and look at the articles, you will also see that they are admitting in an offhand way that totality never occurred. What this means is the blood moon tetrad is a fraud on the face of it, because by definition it required 4 full eclipses, and this was not a full eclipse. Yet, the articles that we are seeing still try to cover up the fact that this never went full, and they make all these kinds of excuses when predicting an eclipse is supposed to be one of the most basic things that can be done in astronomy. I have 2 more clips to run through at 1,000% speed here, and you will see exactly how close to totality we get. Now, as we come into the 20th through the 30th of this month, I have predicted it is the best chance that we may have to film the lunar wave, which is another indicator of the kind of fraudulent descriptions we've had of our moon, which does include eclipses as well. My real concern here is that chemtrailing has been so heavy, and I know the people in Houston that film are saying the same thing, that they are going to try to block our view, which they did this night with chemplanes, trying to block a clear view of the lunar eclipse. If that happens, I'm really hoping people all over the world are trying to film the eclipse that's going to happen on, I think it's the 27th and 28th for most of us, and the 20th through the 30th for the best shot of lunar wave. Anyhow, there it is right there. I've opened up my ISO to make it extra bright. That's as close to totality as that eclipse came. That is not a total eclipse. Now, when you go back and look at footage like this, you begin to get a whole other picture of what is going on with the moon. And I'm here to tell you that this kind of blood moon, ghoulish echoing lie and this tetrad biblical event that is supposed to be going on is nothing more than fear porn and hokum. Anyhow, I hope many of you will go out and try to film these events that are just around the corner. Filming the 20th through the 30th to try to shoot the lunar wave on the moon and getting the what's supposed to be another full eclipse is critical to get it on film, because they will tell you that cameras won't do the job, and I'm here to tell you that cameras absolutely do the job. But there it is. Eclipses are just as fraudulent as every description you've ever heard of the moon, and blood moons are nothing more than fear porn and misuse of terms that fell out of use a long time ago, and this tetrad is broken with the simple clip I just did. The last eclipse we had never saw totality, no tetrad. So there it is. Please try to go out and film in September. Cheers.